Okay, it is time for another mini lecture here, and today we're going to be looking at another level of sentence writing, and this particular level is going to be called Sentences Level 3. We're going to look at three different structures here. It's a simple sentence, but we're altering the structure a little bit in the fact that there'll be one subject that is performing both main verbs. Then we'll look at a combination of three clauses. We can term this structure or formula as compound complex. And finally, we'll reverse the order for our third structure today, which is complex compound. Okay, let's jump straight into it. So one of the most common things that we see is when you have one subject that is actually performing multiple different verbs, and we can actually include this in a new version of our simple sentence. This is something that we often see in many of the assignments that I've been marking already. I've seen students trying to do this, and it can be tricky to make the sentence structure correct. So let's go over it. So this is a common structure that we see when we're trying to have one subject that is one subject noun that is performing two actions. Here's the structure. So it's actually only going to be one clause. And so you have your subject noun at the beginning, then you have main verb number one. We use the linking word and then main verb number two. So you'll notice that there is no second subject, therefore we don't need a comma. And this is what we see, is that sometimes students will want to put the subject, the first verb, comma, and then the second verb. If you're not putting the pronoun in there to create a second clause, you do not need a comma to separate, because the same subject is actually performing the two verbs, and we're using the linking word and to show that relationship. So let's take a look at some examples. Number one, Boromir wanted the ring and tried to take it. So you'll see that Boromir is actually performing both of the verbs here, wanted and tried to take. We use the linking word and to show that that primary subject is performing both actions. Second example, Vivian baked a delicious pie and donated it to the SPCA. So again, we've got Vivian, our subject here, and she is performing both tasks. Now you'll notice that I've done a little bit of color coding just to make things line up and to make it kind of stand out the main players. So what you'll notice is that subjects, verbs, they are the most important words for us to track in our formulas. But we use things like our linking words, like coordinate conjunctions and subordinate conjunctions and commas to link ideas together. So it's the trickiest part about sentence writing is figuring out how to use those linking tools to make things connect the way we want them to. So let's say that you wanted to take example number one, but you wanted to write it as a compound sentence instead. Now this would be very simple to do, and you need to be comfortable moving between the two structures, because the compound sentence is very close to a simple sentence where that initial subject is performing both verbs. So let's take a look at what we would do if we wanted to rewrite our first example as a compound sentence. So here we go, we've got Boromir wanted the ring, comma, and he tried to take it. So by adding the pronoun, we've created a second clause, because as we know, each clause needs its own subject noun and its own main verb. So because we've added the pronoun, we need to also add that comma between the clauses. So you can look at example 1 and example 3 and notice that the ideas expressed are exactly the same. It's just how we've organized and connected the ideas. Read them both of these examples carefully, and then you can use either formula when you're developing your own ideas in paragraphs and essays. It's just up to you how you want them to be written. Okay, let's move to our next new structure. So we're going to be looking at compound complex sentences, and these formulas are quite powerful because now we're starting to build things that are longer in terms of our sentence length and the number of ideas that we're linking together. So as we can guess, these sentences are going to have three clauses. That means three ideas will be expressed, three subjects. Each subject will have its own verb, and then we'll have to use our linking tools. Again, it'll be commas, coordinate conjunctions, the fanboys family, and subordinate conjunctions will be used to organize how the ideas fit together. So let's take a look at the formula. Okay, first we should mention that because of the structure here, because we've got the compound piece first, that means that the two first ideas or first clauses are equal and linked using our fanboys, while the final clause will be a secondary idea here, and it'll be linked by a subordinate conjunction. So here's our formula: C1, comma, fanboys, C2, subordinate conjunction, C3. Now note, because the third clause is being joined in a a complex structure that would be very similar to what we would call a complex B sentence, we don't need a comma. The subordinate conjunction is the linking tool. It's sufficient. So here's an example: Haldir threw the spear, comma, but the Gorgon dodged it since it was quick like a snake. So you can see that we've got our first clause, right? Haldir threw the spear. We're linking it with our comma fanboys. That's the coordinate link. So it tells us the first two clauses are equally important. The third piece of information, since it was quick like a snake, this is additional. It's giving us more detail, but we could remove it without ruining the grammar or the kind of impact of those first two ideas. Okay, let's check another example here. The in-class essay was challenging, comma, and the class, okay, so there's a grammar mistake there. Actually, we would, now that I'm editing it, we'd notice it. So if we notice a mistake there, we go back and fix it, right? We could either say the class members, because it's a subject-verb error where the number is not agreeing with the word form, or we could change it to was. So when you're reading or reviewing your own work, if you do notice a mistake like that, always just go back and quickly edit it. So let's take a look at that example again now that it's been corrected. The in-class essay was challenging, comma, and the class was nervous because it was their first attempt at such an assignment. So again, we've got our two compound ideas, then we've got a subordinate conjunction, and then our third idea. So notice the structure that we're looking for here. We always have a comma before a fanboys element. That's honoring what we would call our compound sentence structure. And then we've just kind of glued on a third clause beginning with a subordinate conjunction. Okay, pushing on. Third and final new structure for this lesson is complex compound sentences. So again, you can predict there's going to be three clauses linked here. The main difference is we've switched the order. So we put that subordinate or less important idea at the beginning of the sentence. It'll start with a subordinate conjunction, then you'll have subject one and our verb, then there'll be a comma. That'll then link into the compound structure, which will have two equal ideas. So once again, we're looking at three clauses here. In this case, the secondary idea comes first, while the two equal clauses are at what we would term as the end, the tail end of the entire structure. And the powerful thing about expanding your arsenal or your collection of sentence formulas is that you have more ways to express your ideas, and when you're writing assignments, you want to show a variety of sentence types, a variety of ways of connecting your ideas. So that's why we learn all of these different structures. Okay, so let's take a look at the formula. As I mentioned, you start with your subordinate conjunction, then you've got C1, that means you'll have a subject and a verb there, then you've got your comma. Now we go into the compound structure. So what you'll notice is that if you choose this formula, this method, you actually do have two commas. Just because of the way you've organized your ideas, we need the commas to honor our existing formulas. So we got C2 there, then we got comma fanboys, C3, and then a period. So let's take a look at some examples. Okay, example 1. Since the Balrog was beyond the other party members, comma, Gandalf had to hold the bridge alone, comma, and he broke the narrow way with his staff. So we can see the ideas here, the way they're organized. Because we're starting with our subordinate conjunction, we need that comma after party members. Now we've got a compound sentence, right? If you were to put a period, or if you were to remove that first idea, starting with Gandalf, it's a compound sentence. But because we've wanted to join three ideas here, it's a little bit more complex. It's quite nice, actually, the way they work together. So the writer is trying to highlight Gandalf, his bravery, and what he did. Because of the choice of the formula, Gandalf is highlighted here as the main, most important idea. The Balrog is there, it's part of the story that we're expressing, but because we've put it in that subordinate clause at the beginning, because we've used the complex compound structure, we're highlighting that in this case, The Balrog's less important than Gandalf and his bravery. Okay, let's look at another example. Oh, this one's a bit simpler, a bit quicker, but again, we can see that each clause is structured properly. Each clause has its own verb, its own subject, has the commas in the right place. Although Gary was fast, comma, Tom was faster, comma, and he won the race. So again, Gary's part of the story, but Tom is the highlight of the story here, as those two clauses are in the compound formula, and compound means the ideas are equal and primary. Excellent. All right, so finally there's going to be some writing practice attached to today's mini lecture, and we're going to actually connect practicing these new formulas with the poetry analysis that was part of your homework over the weekend. So we're going to prepare for Tuesday's table talk. So when we meet in class on Tuesday, you're going to be expected to have analyzed the 5 poems. We had some poems by Blake and some poems by Tennyson that were part of our focus today. We had The Lamb, Poison Tree, and Tiger, and we had Break, 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 and The Charge of the Light Brigade by Tennyson. So we're going to ask you now in today's lessons, after you've done your note-taking and learned and thought about these new formulas, you're going to try to write some sentences about those poems. You're going to take the formulas we've learned and use your analysis work over the weekend to create some example sentences. So first of all, we'd like you to try writing 2 of our new simple sentences where they have 2 verbs, and you can write both of those simple sentences with 2 verbs about Blake's poem, Poison Tree. In terms of the compound complex structure, again, we'll get you to practice 2 of them. One can be about the tiger, one can be about the lamb, both poems by Blake. Finally, we'll do the complex compound structure. There'll be 2 again, and you can do 1 each, one of them about the poem Break, 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 and the other one about the Charge of the Light Brigade. Okay, just a quick lecture today, 3 new sentence structures. We'll see you on Tuesday.